So welcome to the 23rd episode of the Job Service Training Webinars. Um, Today's topic is going to be just job service updates in general. There have been a lot of changes happening recently in the last, well, even in this last week, but also the last few weeks that warrant us taking this job service webinar and focusing it specifically on updates to our program, announcements, and things like that as well too, and also some planning for some ideas and concepts I have coming in 2020. As always, we welcome our partners from the field and Veteran Services, Voc Rehab, RESEA, and others. They're always welcome to participate in our webinars, and updates that we provide in here are meant for everybody. So, but we require them for the job service staff. So, as mentioned, our outline for the day, we'll start with some announcements and reminders. Then we're going to go into job service program updates. We'll pause a moment for questions, and then the next webinar I have scheduled is scheduled for January 30th and 31st, and I'll get that on your calendars soon. So jumping right in to the announcements. I just want to add for you all a clarification. I recently added to everybody's calendar the ETP Career Force huddle calls. These are actually huddles that happen here at the central office, here on 6th floor where I'm at. The employment and training programs have had regular weekly updates to the team around different important topics relating to the Employment and Training Programs Division. In the last year, we've had Career Force split out of Employment and Training Programs, but we're still integrated and work together with Mark Majors as Interim Director of ETP and Lori Janatopoulos to provide updates, regular weekly updates about things important to Career Force, to ETP, and recently we've even added some trainings into it, such as the Governor's Workforce Development Board training that happened recently. We have invited the field into these calls to allow for you all to get some of those updates. I do not expect all 140 of you to log into each one of those calls every week, but I'm hoping that we can find somebody from each office on a rotation who could attend weekly and bring back updates for the rest of your team at a future staff meeting. We're in the process of reviewing those, well, I shouldn't say we are. Lori and Mark are in the process of reviewing the ETP Career Force huddle calls and incorporating the field into them, and so they will continue to evolve as we go forward here. But if you can attend, I'd greatly appreciate it. I'd love to have Career Force represented well and job service represented well. Just a reminder, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but when you call in, they like to make it so that you can speak during webinars, so that if they are going to ask a question, the field can respond. So they don't generally mute you like I have muted you right now. Part of the reason why everybody is currently muted is because accidentally noise broadcasts through your phone. If I don't have you muted and somebody knocks on your door and steps in, we hear that conversation. If you're participating with a coworker and you have a comment to say to that coworker about something that's going on, we hear that. So I just have it set that we automatically mute everybody. I'd rather not. I'd rather have it so that you all are able to interact with this call. But because of technology and we kind of forget about some of that stuff, we use mute and we rely on chat. But a good practice when I don't have you muted is just to look at your own phones. You don't have to use the system to mute you. the phone will let you mute. The little button right there will let you mute yourself, and nobody can hear what you're saying. And that's an easier way to participate, be able to talk on a webinar or conference call without having to remotely mute you. And that'll come in handy when you attend the webinars or the conference calls, which are not usually they're going to use WebEx, but only the conference call portion of WebEx. So you don't have to worry about seeing anything when you're attending a huddle call. Virtual Career Services. As you all know, the Virtual Career Services was a pilot project set to explore how we can incorporate virtual career services into our service delivery in our career force locations. And so we created a sub-team of job service funded staff from some carry forward from the previous year to explore virtual career services. And Shannon Sprouse and Amy Beckrich were our members of that team. Amy left that team a couple of months ago for better opportunity and elsewhere. And Shannon Sprouse was recently hired to become a local Veterans Employment Rep operating out of the Burnsville area. As such, this program will be wound down and is currently being completed. And part of that completion means that we take down the Virtual Career Services line, the email account, the information that's on all the websites. Everything has been pulled off of careerforcemn.com. And Shannon Sprouse, while he's still with our department, is still working to communicate with the staff or the customers who were still using the services about the updates about how best to connect. And what he's going to do is refer all the customers who were calling that, who are still looking for services, back to their local career force office. As we wind down this program, we didn't continue it because there's only a month, and it would probably take us that long just to hire somebody to fill those vacancies. So we're just going to rely on the report that Shannon has created, which is some recommendations for future virtual career services and how we can incorporate that into our day-to-day work. And we'll retain a commitment to virtual career services and be exploring ways to offer similar things to what Shannon and Amy were doing on that project in our general service delivery model. One of the things that came out of doing this project was that we learned that a lot of places were doing virtual already or offering to connect via email, phone, or other methods to connect with customers out in the field. And so it wasn't as necessary to implement in certain offices as a result of that. And we'd like to continue that, maybe see what Shannon and Amy have learned. And so once the report is finalized, we will share that broadly. And the job service managers and I will have continued conversations as to how we can offer virtual career services out in the field. So what's new with Career Force webinars? I know I bring this up a lot, and that's because prior to becoming director, these were an opportunity that we had to participate in. Now that I am the director, I not only participate, but I contribute to these webinars, and also the regular weekly communications that come out on Career Force. And I just really want to strongly encourage you all to take time to attend those. We try to record all of them and have them posted in the staff and partner section of careerforcemn.com. But the webinars are monthly on the first Thursday of every month, and the emails are weekly every Thursday. So please watch for those emails coming out, watch for those webinars, and attend when you can. At the next Career Force webinar, What's New with Career Force webinar, we're going to do some training and some question and answer on the connections process. Many of you are already doing this, but we want to talk a little bit more about that, hear what your feedback you may have on it, We're also looking into things about how best to provide guidance on being a group manager in CareerForceMN.com. And in fact, we might rename that to call that connection manager, because that's really what we're talking about when you're managing those connections. The other thing that we will talk at the What's New with CareerForce webinars is we're going to do an employer for employer navigators, and everybody is welcome to participate in that. Some highlighting of what the employer tools are on CareerForceMN.com, including how to sign up for a profile, what those profiles look like, and also what an employer sees when they log into CareerForce, what they see on their dashboard. This is a frequent topic, and the updates generally stay the same as to about what's going on with the standardized workshops and creative job search. When CareerForce wound down from the WIF grant to its current official part of our services, we have significantly reduced the members of that team. Gina Fortney, Jill Moe, Jane Zhang, and Linda Scogan all were members of that team and are no longer here, and none of those positions have been refilled. As a result, Rita Beatty, Lisa Snyder, and the MinnesotaWorks.net help desk are the remaining members of the CareerForce staff, in addition to Lori Janatopoulos and myself. As a result, getting the standardized workshops and the updated creative job search manual has taken us longer than I had anticipated or intended for it to take, and so we hope to have for you, as these workshops get updated and as capacity allows us to work on them, updated and available for usage out in the system. The first one we're still working on is the basic resume workshop. We've been collecting feedback on it and compiling it and finalizing it, and also working on the handouts. Once all that information is ready, we will send it out to you and also the MOB directors to allow it to be used out in the field. Creative job search is being updated at the same time. There's a lot of rewriting that needs to go on there. We want to make it match brand. I would also like to reduce some of the lengthiness of it, so we're reviewing it to make sure that only the important information is in there, and that it's not overly redundant, and that takes a lot of time. So at some point there will be an opportunity to put out a draft that everybody can respond to and provide some feedback on, but that won't happen until early to mid 2020. So for now, keep using the existing workshops and creative job search content you have. It's still worthwhile content. It's not that out of date that we have to immediately pull it and replace it. Customer satisfaction survey. It's been a few years since we've done one of these, but I've recently talked to the data and survey team, and we anticipate that a customer satisfaction survey will be coming out in early 2020. So one thing I want to mention about customer satisfaction surveys is that they are heavily dependent on people being registered in our system. If they're not in our system, they will not be registered. So if you're delivering good services, make sure that you record them as soon as possible. This also includes the September and March workshop and one-on-one surveys that we've been doing. Your managers came back from the last manager meeting with some survey results. In investigating some of the reasons why some offices had less feedback than others, and when there's less feedback, the feedback eventually can essentially become a little bit more extreme. The reason why the feedback wasn't there is that the data was lagging, up to 15 to 30 days behind. If they're not in the system, they can't receive the surveys. The data doesn't get included in the reports. So that kind of leads us to the next topic too, or a topic coming up in the job service update. It's really good practice to, as soon as you deliver a service, to enter it as soon as possible, or find a method for doing that. So watch for the customer satisfaction survey. There's a lot of interest in that. So hopefully that'll be coming soon, and we'll have some items to look at. Reportable individuals. During recent monitoring with the Department of Labor, the U.S. Department of Labor, it became apparent that there is not a clear understanding about the difference between reportable individuals and program participants. We use these terms and they mean different things in different contexts. Program participants are fairly easily understood. When somebody is enrolled in the dislocated worker, MFIP, adult, youth, diversionary work, or any of those programs, they become a program participant. They are receiving services from that. In Wagner-Peiser Employment Services, when they've received assistance from a staff person, that's when we call them a program participant. Either a one-on-one service, as defined by the categories available in the job seeker detail, or attendance in a workshop. Those are program participants. Reportable individuals are generally those who are using some sort of a self-service. And a self-service meaning something that they're self-directed, they're doing it themselves, they're reviewing information, they're just coming into the career force using the computers in the career lab or other resources in the career lab. It's important to know what reportable individuals are. It's one of the first items in the book, in the career service, the job service program guide. Right there is a definition of reportable individual. And the one that you have printed out, this is more of a program specific. So it's specific to Wagner-Peiser Employment Services, basic career services, and the job service program. So we are going to update the manual, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, but it will have this definition of what a reportable individual is. And so this is important information to know. That's why it's important enough to cover in this webinar today. But you see, it's anybody providing identifying information. So when they come to the front desk and say, I'm looking for this, or I'm interested in this program, if they're using the self-service, if they're receiving information-only services or activities, technically they are all reportable individuals. The way we can track reportable individuals right now is currently done completely through MinnesotaWorks.net. MinnesotaWorks.net tracks reportable individuals when people log into into Career Lab computers using Minnesota Works in Career Force locations. Not all Career Force locations have Cybrarian, Career Force, Career Lab computers. Some of them have a mix. Some of them only have partner computers that do not have Cybrarian on them. In these situations, when you can't have a customer log into the Career Lab, the other way to have them tracked as reportable individuals is to connect them to MinnesotaWorks.net and encourage that they use whatever computer is available to register for MinnesotaWorks.net. That will make them automatically become a reportable individual. Every customer in our system technically starts out as a reportable individual. They've received information, guidance, an application, or some other service that qualifies them as a reportable individual, and then once they start using those services, they become program participants of one or more programs. Any questions about any of those announcements before I move forward here? Well, as always, keep your questions coming. You can put them right in the chat box. Let's see. Here's a question. Does this mean we log more people in? I wouldn't say that we log more people in, But what I will tell you is that it is our responsibility to log all people in. If they're using our services, technically they should be logging into the Career Lab. Um, uh, there's no intent here to artificially inflate any of our numbers, which I know is not what the question was directed at. But but if they are receiving services such as one-on-ones, we should make sure that we're recording them as services. If they're just in the Career Force location and you have an open Career Lab computer, they should be encouraged to log in to the Career Lab computer. Logging in also keeps them active in MinnesotaWorks.net. There's other benefits to logging in, but it's the single way that we can keep track of it. So thank you for the question. So as I mentioned, I referenced, we will be updating the Job Service Program Guide. I promised you when we went over this a couple of months ago, when it was available, that as soon as it was printed, it was going to need an update, and boy, did I deliver on that one. So this definitions page is going to update a bit, and we're also going to add that language that I just had up on the screen to the back of the book. So you'll get an updated electronic version of this. It's not substantial enough update that I need to recall these and replace with the new printed version. But once this updates is significantly enough to warrant a version 2, I will get that updated and printed, and we'll probably change the color or something, the image or whatever it is to help make the difference there. But that'll be coming soon. The naming contest. I wanted to address a couple of things about the naming contest, and there have been a couple of questions that have come along since we started talking about naming that are important to address. And I'll get to your question here on a couple of your questions here in a second here. But on the naming contests, one thing for sure with Creative Job Search, and I believe that naming contest is still open and you still have time to suggest names. Creative Job Search was always going to be renamed, but one of the things that we were able to do is create a contest because where I would like to see that product be renamed come from is the field. And so keep submitting your name ideas to the contest. And one thing that I'm going to make sure that you understand, make sure everybody understands, because I told a couple of people, but I've been using these webinars to remind everybody, if you think Creative Job Search should be the name, put that in there. That can be a vote as well too. So submit your ideas for renaming Creative Job Search to that contest. The other naming contest that's out there is the Job Service Rename Contest. And just to clarify, when we talk about renaming Job Service, this is what we're talking about. These are all the staff and managers and programs that report up through to me, the Job Service Director. Just so you know, for history, this thing has technically never really had a name. We had the Job Service brand. Job Service is actually a national brand that we used for a while under Wagner Pizer Employment Services that we have retained here locally to name our division. Under Dave, it was frequently called the Job Seeker Services Division, but in all cases, it was never really officially called anything until Lori and I agreed that we would call my division or subdivision of Career Force Job Service. So there is technically no name for this, and so that's why I think it's important for us to have one. Please submit your name ideas for this to that contest as well, and I'll send out links on that. When it comes to naming Job Service, I want that to come from somebody on this chart here, somebody on the Career Force Job Service org chart. I'd like for us to locally rename ourselves with our new identity. One name that I have really liked is what we are known as nationally. Our program, Wagner Pizer, is known as Employment Services. You notice those of you who report to Wagner Pizer, your project code is B22ESPY19. For a while I was wondering, why is it ESPY? That's Employment Services Program Year 19. I kind of like that name, but if others of you agree, submit that as a potential name, or whatever name you would like to see have on that. And then for the Job Service Program rename and the Creative Job Search Program rename, my intent is to have the some finalists selected, and then we can vote on what the name will become. And for the Job Service Program rename, I'm still working on figuring out what the prize will be for the winner of that rename contest. That one will be open for a little bit longer, but I'd really like to have our names submitted for the Job Service Program, ideally before the end of November, so we can start thinking about that for or using that in December. Well, not maybe using it. It'll take us a little time to update some of the things we have out there. So I'm going to get to some of your questions now. Should leaver staff or veteran staff enter services provided to veterans on Minnesota Works along with their Workforce One case management? The answer to that question, from my point of view, is no. Guidance on that will come from Ray Duha for sure. But generally, we do not need to duplicate services. So if a DVOP is entering services in Workforce One, or a leaver, whoever it is, if you're entering it in Workforce One, there is no need to duplicate that anywhere else. If there is a service delivered that is not something you would report on Workforce One, and you don't have a place to report that, you can certainly report that in MinnesotaWorks.net. Or if a other job service staff person delivers the service, that can also be and should be reported on MinnesotaWorks.net. Question: for those customer interactions at the front desk who are checking in for an appointment, intake session, or RESEA, could we rely on our partners to get those customers registered? And so this is where there's a little bit of things. When it comes to RESEA, that is job service responsibility because we serve the RESEA customers. So we do not pass that off to the RESEA program, although RESEA staff do encourage and require their participants to register in Minnesota Works. But for us as job service, as part of that serving the RESEA customer, which is our priority number 2, just after veterans, customer, we get them, we help them get registered. We get them into the career lab and take credit for the services in Minnesota Works. For other things such as intake sessions, appointments, and things like that, guidance is coming out to other programs that reportable individuals need to be tracked, and they should be tracked via MinnesotaWorks.net, so that will be helped. But if they're working with us, we should encourage them to register in MinnesotaWorks.net. But it's not always just job service. It's not just job service and Wagner Pizer's responsibility for tracking reportable individuals. Can we solicit customers for the CJS naming contest, possibly contacting past attendees? I'm okay with you submitting on behalf of a customer. If a customer has an idea for a name that you'd like to put in the contest, go ahead and do that. However, whatever creativity we can leverage on that is appropriate for me. But I just don't want the link going out to customers. That would be a very hard thing to coordinate, and also, if you're doing it, then you have the chance to review them before they get into the name pool. Should non-deed partner staff encourage their clients to register and post resumes on Minnesota Works? Also, if Indeed staff partners have admin accounts, enter services, and do those services get counted as a service for our local office or area. Every service that we record into MinnesotaWorks.net is part of our local reporting. Some of the confusion that has occurred over recent years when we were talking about reporting services was that we in Job Service Wagner-Peiser did not really have a policy or practice or procedure set in place for how we track program participants. It was just kind of like, yeah, let's count the workshops, and because that kind of worked in the past. As things have evolved, it became apparent that we weren't tracking program participants. And so we did a ton of training, and you all who have been attending 23 webinars know this, on tracking our program participants. And so we did training on that, and what happened as a result of that is we kind of lowered the importance of the local area reporting, and that is still important. So partner workshops, logging into the locations, all those are still important, and so partners are still able to do that. I have no authority to require anybody to record any services in that. I'm aware that there are expectations that reportable individuals are tracked, but that guidance comes from the program managers and leaders of those other staff. Nationally, has the Job Service brand changed? I don't know that for sure, but I'm sure yes. I can almost definitely say yes. Nationally, the one-stop system is known as American Job Centers. The Wagner-Peiser program is frequently referred to as employment services. Question, would the job service renaming also be a new logo? Potentially, or maybe some sort of a logo that incorporates the CareerForce logo into it, such as CareerForce blank division. Question, is there any news on Ray's old position? Ray's old position Ray is in the process of filling that. He should have an announcement on that soon. So a couple of things I'm realizing I'm talking very slowly today, so I want to be aware of the time and also get to your questions too. Many participants do not have an email address for registering. Does this matter for either tracking or surveying? It does not matter for tracking, but it does matter for surveying. If they don't have an email address, they won't be able to participate in most surveys because they're almost all leveraging surveying. So when you're using the generic email accounts, that customer will not be surveyed. So encouraging customers to create email accounts is a great thing to do. Or if you're in there when you're working with a customer providing a one-on-one service and you have an opportunity to confirm their email address, another great thing to do. It's a lot of work, I understand, so it's not why I'm making it a part of the process, but it would be helpful. So in the future, we will have I'm going to put together a newsletter for the Job Service Division, or whatever we call it. And I'm planning to do that on a regular basis or even just as needed to give you updates so that I don't have to use the training webinars to give you updates. And so I'm looking for suggestions you may have on newsletters. So if you can, please use the chat box to suggest anything you'd like to see in the newsletter, in the job service newsletter. Here are some suggestions that came out of session A of this webinar. I put them on the screen here to give you some ideas about things that could be added to the newsletter. So use the chat box for that. The newsletter will be sent to Job Service. I'm okay with other people receiving it or it being forwarded elsewhere to those who would be interested in seeing that information. There is a possibility that I could at some point move it to GovDelivery, but I prefer to have it come from me because then it's easier for you to see communications from me. Future job service webinars with the start of a new year coming right around the corner. I want to always review the subjects of our job service webinars. And so if you have any suggestions for future job service webinars, please let me know in the chat box as well. And I will take those into considerations as I'm developing the training schedule for the next year. I also want you to tell me things too about, how is this working? Is the Thursday afternoon, Friday morning option still working for you? Is the 1 hour time period still working? Are there any topics you'd like to see updated or repeated? Please send me your suggestions in the chat feature. Anything you put in the newsletter suggestions field or the job service webinar suggestions will be tracked. I pulled all these things you have on the screen here off of the chat transcript from the last webinar. So give me your suggestions via the chat window here. You can send them to me privately if you'd like. You don't have to be they don't have to be to everyone, and I'll try to incorporate as much of that as I can into planning for 2020. Recording services, we spent a lot of time on this. I don't feel the need to go into it anymore other than just to say that it's important. I recognize from spent as much time as I have out in the field that there's a lot of very good work happening out in the field. And in general, the thing we always want to focus on, I understand this very well, is the person right in front of you. And so it's really hard to say, could you also fill out this form? And I just need to take some attendance tracking and all that too, especially when people are emotional and all the things that come along with being in a job search. But recording services is the only way to get credit for the fact that you've delivered them. And I really want to tell your story as a part of our performance metrics. So getting them in there, recording your one-on-ones, recording your workshops timely is important for making sure that we can tell the story and demonstrate that. Again, I'm never interested in data just for the sake of numbers. I want to accurately track what we do. And so with regard to that, if you have a Jake Johnson and there are 15 in the system and you're not sure exactly which one it is, don't record it. You should be 100% sure that you're recording the right person. It's not important to have numbers. It's important to track what you've done. And so if we miss some, which will happen from time to time, we miss some. I understand that happens. We can't be 100% accurate on this, but we can strive to be as close as we can. So please work to record your services whenever possible. Staffing. Job service is still under a staffing freeze. That will continue, but I am still working to see where there are places where there are important positions that we need to refill. So, but I just want, because it came up recently that not everybody was aware of this. We are in a hiring freeze, but important business urgent business needs will be considered as requests to refill positions are coming in. Printing in color. I wanted to add this in here. With the new machines, the new Canons, printing is more expensive than it was under Toshiba. So it's very important that we try to reduce printing in color. This applies to everybody, but I'm going to require it of job service, that you go in there and regularly make sure that you're not printing everything in color. A tip for you, if you have a document that has a front page in color and the rest of the pages are black and white, if you choose the auto feature, it will only print and count the color page as color and every other page is black and white. If you choose the color feature on any print job, it counts it as a color print job. So all the pages would be considered a color print. So keep that in mind as you're printing, and whenever possible, reset your defaults to black and white. And so now we're to the point where we're going to talk about the UI and Job Service Pilot Program. I'll answer this question here real quick. Any chance we can see the manager meeting minutes? Yes. it's held up by me. I was reviewing them recently and getting them ready to post on the job service SharePoint. So those will be out soon. But the UI and job service pilot program, you probably received this memo and the email from me. This is something that we're starting, and I'm going to involve Jerry Mulhern to talk a little bit about this, but I'm going to introduce it, and then I'm going to hand off to Jerry Mulhern to talk more about it. But the job service webinar, or job service program, is going to be selecting 10 members from job service to work on this pilot project under unemployment. These staff will have the same jobs, the same positions, the same employment status. They're not going into temporary. They're not being relocated. They're going to be in the same locations, but they are going to focus completely on the RESEA customer. So they will do all the job service follow-up for those RESEA sessions. They will report to Jerry Mulhern, and they are going to be creating a new service delivery model that will be the new standard model for helping these customers for job service statewide. This project will last up to 2 years, and when this at or before that time, the staff will rejoin us back in job service. It's going to be co-run or led by unemployment and job service, so I'll be working with Jerry on this program. And they're going to leverage a lot of things off of the job service program guide. So they will use some of the tools, the triage, the employment readiness profile, things like that from this pilot, or the guide that we put together. We are not making an announcement right now who the 10 staff are, but we plan to get that done soon. Your locations, there may be members of your team who have chosen to identify themselves as that locally, and that's okay. But we will have a greater announcement about the makeup of this team and some of the details coming soon. But for now, I'm going to unmute Jerry Mulhern and allow him to speak a little bit about the program.
Hi, this is Jerry Mulhern. So Mike already did a pretty good job of describing what we're going to be doing. We're going to have 10 staff that are going to be serving RESEA applicants. We're going to work on a new business or service model. We're going to use triage. We're going to use a lot of the tools that are already in place. I don't expect that we're going to create a lot of new tools, because I think what we've got is good, at least to start with. And then one other little piece that we're going to be working on in particular, besides standardizing how we get people connected to services and get them the help they need, is we're going to work a little more on the individuals that have some barriers to employment and how we can help them get past those barriers, potentially improve their future employment rather than just get them back to the same employment if they're in some of those lower wage jobs. So that'll be another part of it as well. And I think it's all pretty challenging. It'll be a lot of work, but it'll be work that will be fulfilling. And the important thing is it will be helping those individuals. And then as we roll it out and hand it back to job service down the line, and hopefully give you folks some standardized model to work with and give service to applicants. So thanks for all the folks that are on the team. We'll be talking as we get a chance, and I guess I'll leave it at that because I see we're almost out of time here. Sorry about that.
A couple of questions came in. How were the staff chosen for reassignment? And I'll take that one because I worked with Jerry to select. Under this process, we used 5 criteria, and I'm not going to bore you with what those criteria are for doing that, but qualifications, need for services, and other things were considered as part of the reasons for that, among a few other qualifications. And here's a question, Jerry, that I think is better addressed to you because it's more about program delivery. How are the individuals with additional barriers identified in the system, and how are they chosen for more intensive services?
So that's part of what we're going to be working out. I don't have the exact answers on that yet, but we're going to be using essentially a triage model to identify folks that need. So we're going to have folks who just need a pat on the back, you're doing the right thing, keep going, great, let us know if you need anything. We're going to have other folks that just need things like creative job search or their resume review or other things. And then we have to somehow identify those other folks that need more help because they have some other barrier, whether it's they need to improve soft skills, whether they have education that they need to complete, whether it's a language skill or some of those things that BBE might deal with. So those are the kind of things that we'll have to be working on. But the answer is really we have to develop a triage method to get those folks out and get them connected to the right services.
Thanks, Jerry. So now we're to the question and answer section of our webinar. So any questions you have about anything, please feel free to ask. Some questions from yesterday. One is an individual tracked as a reportable individual when they log into their MinnesotaWorks.net account from home or other location? And the answer to that question is yes. If they log in off of this, or from home or any place, they are a part of the reportable individual count. And then the other question that came in yesterday was, do you still want us to send you or Mark Majors positive feedback from customers? And the answer to that question is obviously yes. I always want to know positive feedback, but there's a better place to put that positive feedback, and that is the success stories and comment cards on CareerForce. When a customer tells us, hey, I really love the services, you changed my life, who do I tell? One thing you can say is, well, certainly email my manager and job service director, but there's very little that we can do with that other than smile and congratulate you for a job well done, which is important. But we can also do that if you have these success stories submitted on CareerForceMN.com. Down at the bottom of the screen, there's a submit a success story and a comment card option. That's the best place because when they fill that out, if they're okay with their story being told more broadly, we can feature it in blog posts, in news articles, in annual reports, in the Commissioner's Deed town halls, in the stories of impact. So whenever they say, who do I tell, send them the link to the success stories, and that would be a great way to tell the story. I really want to continue to see more of our stories coming from the field here about the impact, because I know that the lack of stories is not reflective of the success we're having. It's just that we're not telling our story as well as we could. So encourage your customers to fill out that success story form on the CareerForceMN.com website. So here's a question that comes up that's related to the pilot project that is kind of aimed at me. So are job service staff still expected to continue their follow-up piece between now and when the project starts, including during the training time for this project? And so we essentially have no change to the job service program between now and early January when this starts. So, when this program starts, there will be some adjustment time for that. While the people are in training, we may still cover some of those job service sessions. Portions of the RESCE programs. But between now and January, yes, we would for sure continue that as it currently happens. There's no need to adjust that now. But in the future, we will have to adjust how training is handled and all that. But we'll work with Jerry on that. I know one thing from Jerry, and spending more time with him in the last couple of weeks, is that he's very flexible and he will work with us on that. Right, Jerry?
Absolutely.
So another question, with the Career Force rebrand, many partnering agencies are seemingly still keeping their identities and not identifying under the larger umbrella of Career Force. It feels that job services losing their identity more than partnering agencies and falling into the backdrop of services offered. Have you heard this from other regions as well? And do you feel the renaming of job service will help or hurt this? It's a good question. It's kind of a multi-part question. The other identity retention, some of those things are being talked about right now, and now that Career Force has leadership and we have our positions filled, we're talking about those things. But with regard to job service, well, we've identified somewhat unofficially and officially as job service over the years, and it really hasn't been official until recently, because we were kind of job seeker services, we were job service, we were Wagner Pizer, we were a lot of things, we were Career Force. I think that our renaming will help us a lot, which is why I'm interested in doing it. We could have went strongly with just calling us ourselves job service, but it's kind of an older brand. When we rename, we can make that a part of that. We can make it an event to a degree, an internal event maybe, but it'll be more of an event that we can reference back to. I'd like us to have certain things, such as a template for letterhead and memos and things like that as well too. So I think that our rebrand of our division or our subdivision will help us. So thank you for that question. With that, I know I cut this short and then I ended up making it longer anyway, so I appreciate you hanging in there with me. I will not see you via a job service webinar until after I have seen the new Star Wars movie at least a few times. So that means after the holiday season. So I hope that you have a great holiday next week. And whatever holidays you celebrate between now and January, that they are meaningful and that you take time to focus on what's most important outside of your work, which is yourself and your families. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time. And as always, may the Career Force be with you.